Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of From the District, the State Senator Suzanne Weber, joined
Oh,
as always with our illustrious Senator, Senator
it's so nice
Weber.
to
How are
see
you,
you.
Suzanne? It's wonderful to see you. I always, one of the downside of these interim times is I see you
Yes,
just far too little.
yes. Yeah, and have you noticed? I don't know what the weather is like where you're at, but summer came back.
It
It's
did.
incredible.
It did. Unfortunately, it seemed to, I don't know if the sun came out and just knocked a hole in the highway
You
or
know, it might have. It's a
I,
contracting and expanding of the concrete that's been there since 1937. You know,
yeah, and I'm sorry, we were going to get into this a little later, but it just
I
seemed to.
know, but
Um,
it's
we're recording this Labor Day weekend, and there is a giant sinkhole in the north part of Tillamook County. Um,
the bridge.
in the bridge,
That's
which
what
has
makes
been a
the giant
problem,
sinkhole.
which has been a problem in the past.
Yes.
Um, and unfortunately, that means Highway 101 is closed for the
I think
foreseeable
one
future.
lane is open, but I
Well,
would be hesitant to drive on it.
especially over Labor Day weekend when you're going to
Yes.
have this many people. Yeah, I would find it take another way, right? I mean,
It was one of those things yesterday afternoon when I was supposed to be in Cannon Beach for the
yeah,
evening.
you were
And then all of us and I was going to leave early so that I could stop at my favorite fabric store in Cannon Beach before this event. And so as I was getting ready to go out the door, I thought, well, look at um, Facebook just one more time. And there it was. That
mm,
traffic was stopped.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, the event was canceled, postponed till a later date because of unforeseen circumstances, which I don't think was the hole in the highway, but it could have been.
could have been. I mean, I think most of the attendees were probably coming from Clatsop County and from the Valley, so I don't
Yeah.
know, but um, just
The,
another
prob-
example of
the
why
problem
we
with
need
that,
to go
go
ahead.
on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The
You're sure.
problem with that location is there's no road around it
Right.
for miles in either direction.
Yeah. Um, another example of
Yes.
why we continue to bring transportation infrastructure dollars to the district, because those roads were not built to handle millions upon millions upon millions of people. Um, those roads were designed to be mostly driven on by the people who are in the district, and
Right.
um,
Right. And you got to look at the weight changes in the vehicles who travel that road also.
right,
I have been worried about that area just north of Rockaway and before you get to Wheeler,
yeah,
because it's got some serious issues. Just that one little spot, but this is far more
I think in
there.
2015 we had a washout there where you're
Yeah.
talking like right north of Rockaway Beach.
Yes.
We had that washout there. That 2015, 2016, 2017, that late 20 teens, we had like 3 or 4 washouts around
Yeah.
the county. It was pretty bad.
Yes, and we had one up there at the top of Neoconi Mountain just
Yeah.
not that long ago.
Yeah.
So
And it's not even, it's August.
I know it's August.
The rain has not really come yet. And it's
Mhm.
just, oh gosh, it's going to be a rough winter.
Well,
Well,
yes, especially when things are really dry through the summer, and we haven't
yeah.
had much rain at all. And then when the rain does come, all of that stuff is loose and it starts to wash.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, prayers for, just prayers for everybody. Prayers for all of us.
Yes.
Well, today, as we're going into Labor Day weekend, it's kind of the unofficial kickoff to campaign season. So you don't have a
Yeah.
campaign to run your midterm because you do 4 year terms. So we're not talking about a campaign for you at all, but there are a number of ballot measures that are going
Yes,
to
there
be
are.
uh, on the ballot coming up, and there's only 5, which I remember. I was thinking back in maybe 2004, where they had to actually send out 2 editions, 2
Right.
volumes of the voters pamphlet, because we
Yes.
had 15 or 20 ballot measures. It was insane.
Yes.
This are only 5, 3 of which are legislative referrals. 2 ways to get on the ballot. One is a legislative referral, meaning the legislature refers a constitutional amendment to the people. The other way, 2 of them are citizen initiative, meaning people just go out and collect signatures for their idea, and they have a certain number of signatures. And we usually get a lot of those because it's very easy to get on the ballot in Oregon. In other states, you have to have a certain number of signatures, but they also have to come from maybe a certain number of counties or a certain number of legislative districts in a certain percentage. And so it's a little more complex. In Oregon, you can just go set up shop in downtown, well, no, not downtown, but suburban Portland metro area, Salem and Eugene.
Collect your signatures.
You never have to come out to Senate District 16 at all.
And in the past, we've been able to get acquainted with some of these ballot measures just right here in our Safeway parking lot.
Yeah.
Because people have been paid to stand there and collect signatures. Right. On these, I haven't seen anyone, maybe I'm wrong, in Tillamook collecting signatures for initiatives this time around. And I was really surprised at one of them. Well, I shouldn't be. Was gained as many signatures as quickly as it did, with as little information that the public had about it.
Well, sometimes that is to their favor, because as soon as you start digging into them,
you find out that
holy smokes, that's a terrible idea.
Right, and you find out that it's being paid for by wealthy people from California, because Oregon is once again the experimental state. We are the petri dish for all of these initiatives.
The reason for that is because it's so easy to get on the ballot in Oregon. And especially if you have a more liberal-minded, left-leaning idea, if you can just camp out in Portland, it's pretty easy to get on the ballot, especially since you can pay signature gatherers. In some states, you can't do that. So in Oregon, it's kind of everything pointing towards it. There's no geographic requirements. It can be from anywhere. The number's really not all that high, and you can pay signature gatherers. Yeah. So it kind of has there's a reason that we've generally had so many, and I'm kind of surprised there are so few this go round. Right. But let's start out talking. We talk about each one of these 5. Let's start out talking about the ones that you as a legislature, and I say you as as a legislature, you didn't necessarily vote for all of these. Some of you did, some of you didn't. But let's start out with Measure 115. This would create an impeachment system for the executive, for state executive. Yes. Oregon is one of, I think, I may be the only actual state that does not have an impeachment
process. Yeah,
for its governor. So in Oregon, we've kind of discovered this via John Kitzhopper. He was elected for another term, and then a month later, after he was sworn in, a bunch of ethics issues came up. And in addition to only being able to recall, so the only recourse is a recall for the people, but that can't start till 6 months after the term begins.
Right.
So we were kind of stuck with a governor who very clearly had some ethics problems.
Yeah, he did.
But we couldn't get rid of.
Right. So we need an avenue to be able to control that.
Right.
And 115. Sorry, Martin, moment.
Mailman?
No, I don't know who's out there now. But anyway, it gives us an avenue when things go wrong to be able to look at it and bring it to the whole group. And I think that's wise.
Yeah. It is... I'm looking at the website Ballotpedia, which I really like. If folks are interested in it, you can look at some of the ballot measures, and it'll list the known, the known supporters and the known folks who are
Right.
opposing, and there's no real known
There's no
opposition to
opposition.
this.
Yeah, very little.
Yeah, it is. Uh,
I
it
think
is bipartisan. It would
yes,
require 2/3 of both the House and the Senate. So the House would impeach, Senate convicts, same sort of thing as we have in the federal system.
yes,
But it would require 2/3, a supermajority, more than a supermajority of each chamber. So I mean that's
yes.
a high bar. So people hopefully aren't using this politically. But yeah, I think it passed. If it didn't pass unanimously, it came pretty darn close.
It came close.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's
So
measure.
anyway, that's 115.
Yeah, 115.
And
Then we have
we just take off with the numbering from where we left off on the last big one.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last one was 114, which
Yes, which was the guns.
gun one, right? That was 2 years ago. So this one is we have 116.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one.
Yes, it is. Because
there's always been it's always been controversial how much money state officials, elected officials, should make.
Yes. Right. And there's nobody that wants to go after a bill that would increase the amount of money that legislators are getting, because people would use that against them.
And I don't believe it's just, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I don't think it's just state legislators that this is for.
No, it is
for all
it's a wider
state elected officials.
Right.
This came up during the whole Shamia Fagan thing when she was Secretary of State. She was moonlighting without anybody knowing it because she was making.
She's making like $60,000 or $70,000
yeah,
a year.
I might a little more than that, but 80 or so. But she was a single mom, and I don't want to at all excuse what she did. It was terrible.
No.
But she lived in Portland. She was a single mom, Happy Valley, I think. She was a single mom. She was making like 80 grand a year. That's tough. That's tough. I get it.
Yes, and her other job, her moonlighting, was giving her $10,000 a month.
Right. She was, lobbying for an industry she was supposed to be auditing. So that's a problem. But that does bring a question: is we in Oregon, we want to make sure that we also are having good, qualified people running for office, right?
Yes, and we have had several people who have really taken that on as a challenge, and said that it's discriminatory to the legislature because the amount of money that is being paid to some of our elected officials does not provide them a living wage. And so only people who are retired or independently wealthy can then take this on. And that's not true, because we have lots of people who are in the legislature and, they work 2 jobs and keep their job. And but anyway,
people have asked me, and I know Katie, like, when Suzanne's done, are you going to run? And I will say I could not afford it. I mean, I got 5 kids, so that's
right. You couldn't afford it, right?
But I couldn't afford it, and so that's no. I will not be doing that. So there is a point of view that the money that the legislators are not making the money they should. They make $32,000 a year plus per diem, so I think probably averages out to around $50,000 a year. Sometimes the longer session, maybe a little bit more; short session, a bit less. But what this does is it establishes a commission of non-elected officials, volunteers, essentially, to sit down and
it specifically eliminates the authority of the legislature to set such salaries.
Right. And I'm again looking at who's in favor and who's opposed. There's no one listed in opposition. There's a few organizations who support it, some elected officials who support it, but I do not see anybody in opposition to it. So I don't have a strong opinion on this. I don't know if you do. I don't remember.
I don't have a strong opinion on this.
But I do. I
The
think
money is not the reason I'm doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
but I
just,
think it takes to the chicken out of the hen house here.
it does.
So
Yes.
that you weren't doing this, like there's obviously a conflict of interest in here if you were voting to raise your salary.
Right.
So that's not helpful. So if there is an independent commission to handle this, of people who do know what they're doing that makes sense to me, but I don't have a strong opinion. But
yeah, but it's interesting that it has made it to the ballot.
Yeah. Well, you put it there because it was a referral.
It was a referral.
It was on the ballot, but it is interesting that no one is opposing it. I think. If it was controversial, I think we would have seen a campaign somehow get propped up.
Yes.
So those are two kind of not so controversial ones. Generally seen some positive. I haven't seen anything negative about it. Now we're getting into some more controversial ones with Measure 117.
117,
again, one that you guys, and I say you, I think you were sick when this one was voted on.
One sick day in the short session.
And this came through.
Came through.
Yeah.
But I would not have voted for this.
Yeah. So this would establish rank choice voting statewide for state and federal offices, including president, U.S. senator, U.S. representative, governor, secretary of state, attorney general, state treasurer, and commissioner of labor and industries. Funny enough that you guys carved yourselves out of this one. So the legislature would still be elected.
Yes.
No, in like you have a Republican primary, have a Democratic primary, and then you have a fight in a general election. This would establish a rather complex system.
Well, yes. If you look at what's happening in Portland now with the, how they're working up to being able to make sense of the election. I mean, when they're taking donuts and pie and cookies and trying to use those as examples of how we can get to this.
Yeah. So Portland is doing this year for the first time. And I really, really, really wished you guys would have just waited a cycle and said,
that's what I think.
Watched what Portland did and said, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this. Because if you see that if it passes and then you see that it was an absolute disaster in Portland, you're still stuck with it.
Well,
so what ranked choice voting is, for those folks who don't know what ranked choice voting is that it is not partisan. So Democrats and Republicans are all there on your ballot, and you rank everybody on the ballot that you want to according to your choice. So if I think Bob is Bob is my first choice, I rank him 1. If like Sue's my second choice, I rank her 2. And then if I think Jim is my third choice, I rank him 3. And then they count everything up, and if one candidate has 50% or more of first place votes, they automatically win. But if they don't, the bottom one is kicked out, and everything's retabulated.
Yes.
And that person's number 1 votes go to their number 2 votes.
Yeah. And we have all of these concerns about election integrity now.
This isn't going to help.
This is not going to make things easier for people to understand, or for administration either.
And I get what they were doing. The whole purpose of it is to, at the end of the whole process, is to elect somebody that everybody can at least live with. Right. So that it's maybe not everybody's first choice, but everybody ranked him high enough that he's you don't immediately have 60% of the people hating them. Yes. Right. So But I think in reality, though, this process is going to be so confusing to voters. They're not going to know what to do, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. So these do have supporters and support and opposition. The supporters are mostly so you got the Democratic legislators, the ACLU, the teacher unions, League of Women Voters, for example. Then there are a couple of organizations opposed, one of them being the Oregon Association of County Clerks. And
I understand that. That's
when we're talking
clear
about creating a new system to count votes, and the people who count the votes are concerned about it.
Concerned about it, yes.
Boy, that raises some red flags to me.
Yes, it does.
So we need to be on the lookout for that one. I don't know if there's going to be like advertising both sides of it, but
we're not hearing a lot about any of these except for one of them at the current time. But we're not hearing about that. And I think that people are listening and watching to what's happening in Portland. And I think that with all of the explanations, I think it's made it so much more difficult.
Yeah. And so this is an interesting quote from the Oregon Association of County Clerks. They say, ranked choice voting makes for a more complicated primary. Reconciling ranked choice voting between multiple counties is complicated and will remove final tallying from county election officials. The difficult task placed on Oregon election officials seeking to reconcile the number of ballots accepted and tallied when multiple ballot pages and sheets are sent to each voter. Many voters only return the ballot pages with the contests that are interest to them. There are substantial costs also involved with implementing ranked choice voting. So
you're talking about how long it's going to take to determine this on a bigger scale. It's going to be extremely hard.
Yeah. I wish this could have been a year or two later.
Yes.
Watch what happens in Portland. I guarantee you will not know who the winners, and it's not only Portland that have a problem with this, they're having this, and they have an entirely new form of government that they're implementing.
Yes.
So they have entirely new city council, and it's going to be a problem.
We have our neighbors to the north to look at as the cautionary tale also in Washington.
Yeah, so Washington doesn't have ranked choice voting. They have jungle primary. So every candidate's on, and they don't have party next to them. So you can vote for whoever you want. And then whoever gets the most votes wins. So that's I have less of a problem with that. This is just going to be crazy confusing.
Yeah, it is.
So, but watch Portland. And if this passes, watch Portland, and you'll see what we're in for statewide.
Yes.
I don't think you're going to like what you see.
No, I don't so either.
Okay.
So then we go to the big one.
Yeah, these next two. So the three we just talked about were referred to the people from the legislature, which the legislature can do. These two collected enough signatures to get on the ballot. Now, the big one, as you mentioned, is what they call a corporate tax revenue rebate for residents, which is a euphemism, I think.
Yes, it is.
Because it creates a tax on sales, which technically is different than a sales tax.
Right, and we've already got one of those.
Yeah.
But this is going to be another one.
Of 3%.
Yes.
Exceeding $25 million of gross sales. Not a profit.
Not
gross
sales.
So, $25 million sounds like a lot of money. But when you're talking about grocery stores or a car dealership.
Like with the cap tax, everybody thought $1 million. Oh, gosh, that will protect the small businesses. We have many small businesses that exceed the $1 million mark, and how hard that was on them. And many of them made sure that that we all knew by looking at the bottom of our receipt how
Right.
we had contributed to that tax.
There's a hardware in
And
Colorado that does that. But I think a lot of people think when they're hearing those numbers, they go, "Oh, they wouldn't be affected. That's a small business." Well, they're
Right.
very affected
Yes.
because when you're doing retail of a certain size, like your local grocery store, your car dealership, if you do anything, a computer equipment, those are
big ticket items.
big ticket items.
Yes.
And we're talking about you sell $25 million worth of gross sales.
But it doesn't only impact the businesses that are located in Oregon. If businesses are out of state and do business in Oregon, it's going to impact them also.
Right. I bet there's some lawsuits coming.
Well, what is this going to do to generating additional business, especially the big business, especially when we're already calling for 15,000 layoffs in Intel?
Right. Well, I think it's going to do one of two things. One, they'll either reduce jobs even further.
Yes.
Hit those companies even further, or those big corporations who can afford them. What they're going to do is find ways to get out of it. They have fields of lobbyists on their staff who will do everything they can to get with not having to pay it. But who doesn't generally have lobbyists are those small town grocery store or that small town hardware store,
right,
or that local Ford dealership or that local computer store or things like that. They don't have lobbyists. They're not going to be able to get out.
They don't have lobbies, and they also don't have groups that would lobby for them.
Right. So what would the money do? So it would then give essentially another kicker.
Yes.
Except for it would all go to everybody.
Right.
It is not means
and initially they said it was going to be $750 to each person who qualifies. And the basic qualifying factor is that you've lived in Oregon for 200 days.
Right. So that means you get a check, your neighbor gets a check, Phil Knight gets a check.
Yes.
The homeless fentanyl addict that lives down by the river is going to get a check. Wonder what he's going to do with it.
And they have adjusted the amount. Initially, it was $750. Now it's $1,600. But still not going to pay your rent for a month.
Right. That's per year. So essentially, a bunch of people lose their job.
Right.
A bunch of corporations say, "I'm not doing business in Oregon," so that everybody can get about $120 a month.
Yes.
That is insane.
Doesn't make any sense.
The acceptance of the insanity of this is quite bipartisan. Certainly, we have all of the elected Republicans in the legislature who have come out opposed to this, but you also have
the governor has
come out against it. The Senate president has come out against it. The Senate majority leader has come out against it. The House majority and the House Speaker have come out against it. The treasurer has come out against it, all of whom are Democrats.
Yes.
This is not liked. This is a very, very, very bad idea, which you rightly say and pointing out that this is a petri dish idea from California. Who recognizes that it's very easy to get on the ballot in Oregon if you have enough money. And they're going to see if this works.
Yes, and people have to remember, too, that, the last Petri dish one we had was 110. And that was paid for by people on the East Coast.
Right.
And once again, sold a bill of goods.
Yeah.
Didn't read to the bottom of the page.
And so good thing to remember, the damage that was done to the people and the communities and the businesses in the state of Oregon of that 110 did. That same damage, a different kind of damage, but it's damage the same.
The potential is there.
Will come to Oregon again because
it will cripple business.
Yeah. So bipartisan opposition, the people who are in favor of it, I see. Just a second, pull that up. The Oregon Progressive Party, the Oregon Working Families Party, the Pacific Green Party, the Progressive Democrats of America, and the Teamsters Local 206. Those who are opposing it are Representative Chavez DeRemer, a Republican from the Valley, representing the Valley in Congress. Yes. Representative Val Hoyle, who represents
she's a Democrat
from like the Eugene area.
Yes.
The governor I mentioned, as well as Intel Coke companies. You don't generally see the Koch brothers and Tina Kotek agreeing on a whole lot, but they agree on this. Nike, Oregon Business Council, Oregon Business and Industry, Oregon Farm Bureau, Portland Metro Chamber, Tax Fairness Oregon, and Western States Petroleum Association.
We had a really intense discussion about this at the Tillamook County Economic Development Commission yesterday as something that is really people have to pay attention to, and we have to really educate people. Yeah. And the person who brought it up initially was on the Farm Bureau, from the Farm Bureau, that was the most concerned about it. And
well, certainly in terms of money in the door right now, the other side, the support side has about $800,000 in contributions, and the opposition has about $5 million. So the cash advantage is on our side, which is so rare. Yeah, I think that just goes to show how incredibly ridiculous this idea is.
Yes,
Democrat, Republican, we can all agree. We don't agree on much anymore, but we can agree on that this is insane, and we should absolutely not be doing this.
Yeah.
So that's measure 118. One more. We'll wrap it up. Measure 119. This would be to require cannabis businesses to submit a signed labor peace agreement, essentially requiring them to be neutral in labor negotiations. Right. So who's going to be in the pot union, essentially?
Yeah.
It allows.
Who's going to picket that one? Huh?
Yeah, that's going to be one hell of a picket line.
Yes, it is.
Look, I don't know much about that. I haven't looked into this one. I don't know if you have.
This is one that I haven't spent a lot of time on because there were so many other issues that needed more research and attention than this one.
Right.
A permit to operate, remain neutral regarding communications regarding employees forming a union.
It has no organized opposition as well. No. The local union. The only listed support is the local union that I would assume that would actually be representing these guys.
Yes, and the closer it gets to election time, the more calls I get from people asking me to explain, the ramifications of some of these things.
Yeah.
And that one's going to be really interesting to explain.
I really encourage people to go to ballotpedia.org, and you can search candidates, you can search ballot measures, but I think it's really particularly useful for ballot measures.
Yes.
Because you can see how much money's been raised on both sides, who are the main contributors, who are the main supporters, who are the main opponents. Here's some quotes that have been said, and it's just kind of an aggregate. You can find all that information on your own, but it's all aggregated. It's not partisan.
All one place.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's nonpartisan. I think it's really useful. So ballotpedia.org, you can get the basic information. And then there's links there also for some additional information. Same sort of thing you see in Wikipedia.
Right. And the Taxpayers Association of Oregon, too, has done a lot of research on this.
Right.
And they have the information, and you'll probably be getting a flyer in the mail from them.
Oh, I'm sure. At least if you're on their mailing list.
Yes.
Well, that like I said, there are only 5 this year. I'm just really surprised, given how high profile this is a presidential election, and there's always so much going on to have so few. I just only have 2 citizen legislative concepts come forward and be certified. Surprising to me, but here we are.
Here
What
we
else
are.
do you have, Senator? What else do you have going on this month? This is coming up on September. Like I said,
We've got
a
ledge
lot of
days
elections
at the end
happening.
of the month. We've got ledge days, and
Really?
you know, I'm on two different groups that are putting together reports. One is the Hunger Task Force, Oregon Hunger Task Force,
Mhm.
to explain, going forward, especially about continuing to feed our kids, and the chronic absenteeism task force. We're going to be presenting also, and putting together our best effort for how we think we can address this, because it's something we're just starting out with. We've only been working since the end of the short session on this. But it is, once again, a report to let both Senate and House education committees know what we are doing, because there is a joint meeting of the two during that time, to be able to explain our progress and what we've learned.
Awesome. And that's
So
what these are for. That's what a lot of
Yeah.
these legislations are for, is to, especially as we're getting, especially as we're getting toward the, as we're getting really close to legislative session
right.
coming up. Now's the time that we're starting to develop legislative concepts that come out of the study groups.
The other thing that I'm doing is getting hold of municipalities and different groups to encourage them to look at what their infrastructure needs are and what we can lobby for in the long session, to be
Right.
able to, because I am dedicated to making sure that infrastructure in the district is addressed
Well,
with vigor.
we see, as we discussed at the beginning of this, how incredibly important that is. And
Yes.
that's state highway, so that's that we can do with ODOT there. But there are a lot of county roads that are heavily traveled, and a lot of city
Yes.
roads that are heavily traveled, and a lot of these roads have very old infrastructure or underneath them. Remember,
Right.
remember digging up clay and wood pipes in
Yes.
Central County,
Yeah.
water pipes. We got to get those things taken care of. We need to get those things fixed.
Right.
As
Yeah.
as we keep
And
saying, we may
you
not see
said-
a whole lot of new people moving to the area, but we certainly have a lot of people visiting and using those utilities.
Yes. And water especially is something that we have to pay attention to. We have the Water Caucus that is focusing on basically on Eastern Oregon, but wants to encompass all of Oregon, because when we go dry a lot faster than Eastern Oregon does. If we don't have the water, we've got issues regarding the ability to build. We need housing. We need especially workforce housing. If we don't have the water, the ability to provide that water, and a lot of the water that we provide is groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a lot of wells that come in that are salinated. So you can't be, throwing salt water out there.
No.
So, those are things that we have to work through also.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraging all the municipalities, especially, to,
yes.
Make sure that our office has their what they need going forward.
I remember we got one request back when I was chief of staff, when we were in the House. Like, somebody just emailed us like 5 lines of what they thought a project was going to cost, and it was like $4 million. It's not the biggest project in the world, but it's still $4 million, and
Yes.
you're sending over bag of napkin calculations. That's not going to be good enough. We really need projects that are close to ready to go, that have maybe some engineering done, that are laid out to show that, hey, the competent professionals are running this. We're ready to go. But here's the funding that we need.
Yeah, and something that will be extremely important during Ledge Days is, of course, the economic forecast.
Yes.
And and right now we're once again looking at the reality, most likely, of a $1 billion kicker
Right.
in the next time the kicker comes available. So, we're looking at a lot of things that require funding. We know that education is going to be requiring additional funding. We have had the road show with the transportation committee, and that's House and Senate, and they're going to come back with a whole new list of things that need to be funded. And can we do that? Are we going to have the money to be able to do it? I know I'm going to go to the last one of those hearings. I went to the one in Tillamook County and expressed what we, needed up and down the coast. But since that time, things have changed, as we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah, there's a hole in the road.
Yeah. And we have to reiterate to that group of people how important our coastal transportation system is.
Well, as inconvenient and frustrating and as expensive as that hole in the highway will be, it does give us an opportunity to point to something and say, this is a big freaking deal that we have to fix. We need these things fixed.
And this is one bridge.
Yeah.
We already had, we have in Tillamook County at the top of Juneau Hill, that railroad bridge that we thought we were going to be able to get money to be able to rehab that bridge, because that's going to be impactful on Tillamook County, especially if something happens to that bridge. Well, then we found out we weren't going to get that money because the Rose Quarter was going to get that money. So, we've got to look at rural versus urban needs. And yes, I understand that Portland needs those highways and that they have a lot of issues regarding traffic. But we have a lot of issues just plain regarding resiliency and survival.
And it's a both and thing too, right? I mean, we need those highways in Portland to be able to have traffic and things flow through it, because as you're off to say, everything that comes in and out of here comes in a truck, and it almost always goes through downtown Portland.
Right.
The frustration is when that money goes to downtown Portland, and then 6 million protesters show up to try to slow everything down, and that money gets eaten up in a project that never happens. So that money goes there, doesn't get used, and instead of going to Juneau Hill, where it would be used. That's the problem.
Juneau Hill or Oswald West or
Right. So, well, we've got a lot to do, but Senator, I hope you have a spectacular rest of your Labor Day weekend. I hope you have fun things planned.
No, I don't. I'm going to weed the garden, and my green beans have come in.
Oh, spectacular.
And so I'm going to figure out something to do with green beans.
Oh, my favorite vegetable.
I love green beans.
They're my favorite. I don't know why. I was a little boy, and that's what my mom and my grandma would give me, these canned green beans, and I just love those things.
Well, the thing that my granddaughters do, when they're here, is they go to the garden and they pick and eat raw green beans, and they love that.
Never did that. I never did. I picked all the other, like, raw peas and raw carrots and all that. Green beans I ate with a vast amount of butter and salt.
Butter and salt.
Yeah.
Or if you go to the sausage dinner, it has to have bacon and onions.
Oh, so good.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah.
All right.
And the kids, are they all ready for school?
Yes.
They haven't started already, have they?
They have. They started quite early. It started in mid-August, but they get out before Memorial Day. So that's a win.
Well, grandson Sam started at the beginning of August also.
Oh.
But he's in California. But they start early.
They do. Do they go all the way to June? Hope they don't.
No, May.
Yeah. That's. I don't mind that.
Right.
I don't mind it. I might have minded it, back when I was in school, but I don't mind it as a parent.
Yeah.
All right, Senator.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of
Thank you.
your
Have
holiday weekend.
You have
And
a
everyone,
wonderful holiday too.
You too. Everyone, we'll see you next month. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.